سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم رسولا ونبيا. رب أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك رب أن يحضرون ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Continuing on with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's legendary military empire legacy, the era of Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu, after completing a total of 22 videos or 21 videos, excuse me, in the same series, and the prior Caliphate of the era of Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, a total of 69 videos. Prior to him, Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, a total of 50 videos. In the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's legendary military career, a total of 30 videos on the same channel. Now we're picking up on page number 308, 15.3, Bahrain in Al-Yamama, also Uthman. And this is in reference to the various military commanders, governors that were placed the various Muslim cities. Very interesting. Again, Uthman ibn Abi al-As al-Thaqafi was the governor of Bahrain when Umar ibn al-Khattab passed away, and Uthman retained him for some time. Narrations indicate that he still held the position 3 years after allegiance was paid to Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan, which was the 27th year of the Hijriya. This would seem to be the case because sources state that he and his army joined the army of Basra in some conquest. It appears that the cooperation between the rulers of Bahrain, or the rulers of Bahrain and Basra, which had begun in the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, increased and became stronger during the rule of Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu, especially after Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Khurayz took office in Basra for the governor of Bahrain because one of his military commanders. In other words, for the governor of Bahrain. So let's just circle back around on that. And of course, there are some lengthy sentences in the narrations here. But nevertheless, so it appears that the cooperation between the rulers of Bahrain and Basra, which had begun in the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, increased and became stronger during the rule of Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan, especially after Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Khurayz took office in Basra for the governor of Bahrain because one of his military commanders. History books inform us that Bahrain fell under the rule of Basra to some extent as Ibn Amir started to appoint its governors himself. One Muslim researcher affirms this cooperation. During the era of the Caliph of Uthman ibn Affan, Bahrain joined Basra when the latter became the base for the conquest of Persia and some southern Iran. Consequently, its governors became unanswerable to the governor of Basra, which strengthened the connection between Basra and Bahrain. Uthman's governor in Bahrain included Marwan ibn al-Hakam and Abdullah ibn Sawar al-Ubadi, who was in charge when Uthman passed away, when he was martyred. Bahrain played an important role in Uthman's time in dispatching troops for the conquest of eastern Persia. Its governor Uthman ibn Abi al-As had a significant role in these conquests as well. The situation in Bahrain was peaceful up until the time Uthman radiallahu anhu was martyred. In Umar ibn al-Khattab's time, Al-Yamama was virtually under the command of Bahraini and Oman, to the extent that the governor of Bahrain would sometimes send them their new ruler. During the era of Uthman ibn Affan, it seems that Al-Yamama had a governor appointed by Uthman ibn Affan himself. Sources mention him in the occurrences that immediately followed the murder, stating that the murder of Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhu, stating that he received letters from people who had been enraged by the killing. 15.4 Yemen and Hadramaut. When Umar bin Khattab radiallahu anhu was martyred, his governor in Yemen was Ya'la ibn al-Munayya. He was on his way to Al-Madinah on orders from Umar when he received a letter from Uthman informing him that the Caliph's passing. The people's pledge of allegiance to Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu and Uthman bin Affan's appointment of Yala as governor of Yala was still in this position when Uthman bin Affan was martyred. The governor of the city of Al-Jund was Abdullah ibn Rabi'a, and he continued in this position as well. Throughout Osman's Khalifa, it seems that there were other governors as well in the rest of the cities of Yemen, but the main source mostly focused on these two. Sources do not say much about the situation in Yemen during the era of Osman bin Affan. In Osman's time, radiallahu anhu, the people of Yemen were known for obedience to their governor. This is indicated by the narration stated that Osman sent a Thaqaf man to Yemen, and when he returned, he asked him about its people. The man responded, I saw a people who always gave what they were asked, whether it was rightfully done or not. It is also known that many people, Yemeni tribes, migrated to the new Muslim lands in Al-Iraq, Egypt, and Syria during the conquest in the time of Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab. The contact of Yemen and its people with these regions was continuous in migration, even if sometimes performed by a single person, continued from Yemen to the rest of the Muslim lands throughout the Uthmanid Khalifa. This is not strange, for we find that some Jews of Yemen played a significant role in stirring up the conflict towards the end of Uthman's life, which eventually led to his martyrdom. These troublemakers were led by Abdullah ibn Saba. After his assassination, a number of governors left Yemen for the Arabian Peninsula in order to participate in current affairs there. Among these men were Yala ibn Munayya and Abdullah ibn Rabi'a. 15.5 Syria. When Uthman became the Khalifa, Muawiyah was the governor over most of Syria. He was retained in his position together with other governors like those of Yemen, Bahrain, and Egypt. After further achievement, more regions were placed under Muawiyah's rule until the whole of Syria was under his jurisdiction. In fact, he eventually became the strongest and most effective of Uthman's governors. There were other governors in the beginning of his Khalifa as well, such as Umayr ibn Sa'ad al-Ansari, who governed Homs and competed with Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan for status before Uthman. He eventually became sick and could not carry out his responsibilities, so he asked the Caliph to excuse him. Uthman did so and subsequently appointed Muawiyah to the position. This expanded his authority to Homs, which had previously been governed by Abdurrahman ibn Khalid ibn al-Walid. Then Al-Qama'a ibn Mihazar, the governor of Palestine, passed away, and Uthman merged his province with that of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. That point, 2 years after Uthman had taken office, the whole of Syria fell under the governorship of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, and he remained in his position throughout the remaining years of Uthman's Khalifa, which ended with the martyrdom as well stated. The period of his governorship in Syria was eventful because Syria was one of the most important regions for the jihad. Even though the situation in Syria was stable, Islam was powerful and the Byzantines did not attempt to stir up much trouble there. The country was still adjacent to their land that granted Muawiyah suitable opportunities to engage in the jihad in those areas, as we have already discussed. Muawiyah had an influence on the politics of the Islamic State towards the end of Osman's Khalifa, for he was among those whom Osman assembled for consultation at the first signs of turmoil, and he presented his opinions to Osman radiallahu anhu. This will be discussed later on as we get there. Armenia is 15.6. The Muslim army set out towards Armenia for the first time in the era of Sayyidina Osman bin Affan, the first army comprising some 8,000 fighters were sent from Syria, one of the closest regions to Armenia, led by Habib ibn Maslama al-Fihri. They were able to conquer many regions in Armenia, but after the Byzantines had gathered their forces to help the Armenians, the Muslims decided that continuing on their own would be too dangerous. Habib sought reinforcements from the Khalifa, who ordered an army of 6,000 Mujahideen men to be sent to them as reinforcements from Kufa, led by Salman ibn Rabi'a al-Bahili. There was some disagreement between Habib ibn Maslama and Salman, but upon hearing about it, Uthman wrote to them and solved the problem. It seems that Salman ibn Rabi'a was the leader of the Muslim forces because Uthman had written to him a letter appointing him as governor of Armenia. Salman penetrated into Armenia and all the way to Khazar. He was victorious and continued his conquest until finally, in a fierce battle between his army, 10,000 troops, and the army of the king of Khazar, comprising 300,000 as confirmed by the narrations, he and his entire army were decimated. They were martyred on that fashion. Uthman wrote to Habib and instructed him to march to Armenia. Thus he set out with an army and conquered its regions one after the other until the Muslims had taken over the land and some treaties had been struck with its people. Next, Uthman wanted to send him to the outposts of Mesopotamia because of his experience and effectiveness. He appointed Hudayfa ibn al-Yamama as governor to Armenia in addition to his position in Azerbaijan. During his governorship, Hudayfa launched a number of expeditions to Khazar from Armenia. One after the other, Uthman dismissed him and designated Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah to govern Armenia. He governed Azerbaijan at the same time, and he retained those positions until Uthman's demise, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. The rule of Armenia is regarded as a new addition by Uthman to the Muslim state since it had not been conquered in the past. Muslims went through severe hardship to conquer it and organize its affairs. 15.7 Egypt. During the Khalifa of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, the governor of Egypt was Amr ibn al-As, whose governorship lasted for approximately 4 years. After Umar had passed on, Uthman initially retained him. Amr was helped in some regions of Egypt by Abdullah ibn Abi as-Sarh, who had accompanied him since his conquest of Palestine as one of his commanders. He had also participated with him in the conquest of Egypt, and Umar ibn al-Khattab had made him responsible for some parts of Upper Egypt after they had been conquered. It appears that there was some disagreement between Amr ibn al-As and Abdullah ibn Sa'd ibn Abi Asar, leading Amr to go to Uthman after allegiance had been pledged to him and request him to dismiss Abdullah ibn Sa'd from his position in Upper Egypt. Uthman rejected this request, stating that Umar had appointed Ibn Abi Asar and that so far he had not done anything that would necessitate his dismissal. In spite of this, Amr insisted upon his dismissal while Uthman persisted in his refusal. The end result of this mutual obstinacy was Uthman's realization that it would be better to dismiss Amr himself from Egypt and to appoint Abdullah ibn Abi Asar in his place. This is what eventually took place. This is what happened. In these circumstances, the Byzantines attacked and took over Alexandria, killing every single Muslim there. As a result, the commander of the faithful deemed it best to reappoint Amr as the commander of Egyptian armies, so that Alexandria could be reclaimed and the Byzantine troops could be finished off. This had been detailed in a section earlier on the conquest. Uthman bin Affan wanted to to reassign Amr to command the troops of Egypt during their wars and to appoint Abdullah ibn Sa'd to take care of the land tax. However, Amr was not in favor of his arrangement. There are very few reports about his governorship in Egypt during the era of Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan, although his role in jihad has been significantly mentioned. He successfully expelled the Byzantines from Alexandria and established peace across in entire Egypt. Uthman appointed Abdullah ibn Abi Asar as governor for a second time after dismissing Umar from his position in Egypt, or Alexandria to be more precise. Abdullah became the official governor of Egypt and controlled the entire region along with its military, land, taxes, and every other affair. The situation in Egypt remained stable in the beginning until the troubles. The liking of Abdullah ibn, or the ilk of Abdullah ibn Saba, found their way into and began stirring up conflicts during Egypt. These people and those affected by them played a significant role in Osman bin Affan radiallahu anhu's assassination. 15.8 Basra. When Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu was married, his governor in Basra was Abu Musa al-Ash'ari. In those days, Basra society was going through major changes in terms of the residential and social structures. This was because it had been the greatest military center in the Islamic world through the immigration of many tribes whose armies participated in the conquest of numerous regions. This gave it special importance in the beginning of Osman's Caliphate. Actually, in addition to such public duties as jihad, people were also occupied with their personal affairs. This made the governorship of this province and all the provinces under it a difficult task that required special knowledge in order to effectively manage this region. It would seem that Umar ibn al-Khattab felt that Abu Musa al-Ash'ari was especially qualified to govern the province. This can be assumed because he instructed that his successor should remain or retain Abu Musa al-Ash'ari for 4 years after his demise. The period of his governorship included jihad and struggle, during which the significant role of the Muslimin of Basra, along with his own achievements in the conquest of many regions in Persia, became evident. He also stabilized the situation in some regions that had been conquered in the past by fighting the people who had broken treaties after Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu's demise and re-establishing al-Islam in these regions. In addition to his role in the conquest, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari played an important role in setting up an irrigational system and digging canals in Basra in this time of Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu. He also initiated similar projects, although he could not complete them due to his dismissal. Abdullah ibn Amir, the new governor, completed this work instead. Abu Musa's governor in Basra did not last long. Uthman dismissed him in the 29th year after the Hijriya and replaced him with Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Khurayz. Historians mention a number of narrations regarding the dismissal of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari due to some disagreements he had with the army of Basra. Though there are different reasons cited for this. Consequently, a group of Basrans went to Uthman and urged him to dismiss Abu Musa, saying, "We do not want you to ask us everything we know about him. Please replace him with someone else." He asked, "Who would you like to be your governor?" They replied, "Anyone is better than him." Some people asked Uthman to appoint a man hailing from the Quraysh. He dismissed Abu Musa and replaced him with Abdullah ibn Amir. Through this incident, we can see the wisdom of Abu Musa along with the level of his obedience to the Khalif. When he heard about his dismissal, he ascended the pulpit and praised Abdullah ibn Amir, a youth of 25 years old, saying, "There has come to you a boy of noble paternal and maternal aunts and grandmothers from the Quraysh who will make you wealthy." In these difficult circumstances in Basra, Uthman was able to appoint a new governor to whom The people responded, and thus the Muslims remained united in the face of the enemy. The dismissal of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari radiallahu anhu was actually an act of honor. It saved him from being humiliated by some ignorant laymen who had been influenced by the rabble and their rebellious and corrupt ideas. They harbored hatred towards him and revealed, or they held and harbored hatred towards him and reviled him in public. In other words, made mockery of him in public. When Ibn Amir took office, the situation in Basra was chaotic, and Uthman was compelled to distractically or drastically change, the way it was governed. He combined the troops of Bahrain and Oman with the army of Ibn Amir in Basra in order to provide him with more power to face his current challenges. The result was as desired, and Ibn Amir his power and effectiveness greatly increased. This affected the city of Basra itself. It became one of the stable capitals of the Islamic State, and different tribes began migration to it. Consequently, the burden of the government also increased with regard to the management of the accounts and all of the various administrative, financial, and security issues. As soon as Ibn Amir had taken office, the province and its troops, along with Ibn Amir himself, began achieving great conquests, which ended just before the assassination of Sayyidina Uthman ibn al-Affan radiallahu anhu, the commander of the faithful. Because of these conquests and the expansion in different fields, Basra earned a special place among the Muslim regions. During the governorship of Ibn Amir, it drew Uthman's attention, finally becoming a prominent administrative center from which many Muslim provinces were operated in line with Osman's orders. Ibn Amir was made responsible for appointing the rulers of the direction or of the different regions, administered by Basra. Therefore, he had a great responsibility. As soon as he assumed office, he began sending these rulers to various regions after choosing specific individuals for the jobs. Among the most important regions were Oman, Bahrain, Sajistan, Khorasan, Persia, and Ahvaz, which covered different cities and other vast areas. He would change his personnel from time to time as dictated by the public interest. Basra was also famous for its treasury, whose income and expenditure had increased in his times. Dirhams with Arabic writing were minted during his time between 30 and 35 years after the Hijriya in some areas of Persia that belonged to Basra. There were many rumors that Uthman had only appointed him because he was his next of kin, but in fact, Ibn Amir was loved by people of Basra in general and was a popular leader. Inshallah, we will stop here and pick it up from page number 317. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وتبارك اسم ربك وتعالى جدك ولا إله غيرك ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.